think that every human life is precious, but you cannot equate the oppressed with the oppressor. No way. Israel can't have the cake and eat it too. We know what Israel is doing. We live in the West Bank and Gaza. We see the confiscation of land. We see the mounting pressure from the Israelis on us. Actually, we see what the Israelis are doing. They're hijacking peace. The Labour Party and the Likud. There is only one solution. And I'm sure, confident, that we're going to reach it. It's a matter of time and a matter of casualties. The solution is for Israel to recognize the inevitable, that a Palestinian state is going to take place in the West Bank and Gaza. As soon as Israel, Likud and Labour recognize that and start actually negotiations on the formation of the state, not negotiation how to obstruct this disaster that is going to happen, delaying it for maybe 2, 3, 5 years at the most, we will all be better off. To tell you the truth, I don't think that there's a big difference nowadays between Likud and Labour. There used to be a difference, but Rabin basically was the compromise between the left and right in Israel. He projects himself as a Labour Party, but what he does is actually belongs to the Likud Party. Likud and Labour, they don't want to go back to Gaza. Likud and Labour don't know what they want in the West Bank. They're not yet definite. They don't want to leave it, but they know the dilemma that they are suffering from. 2 weeks ago, new numbers of how many Palestinians are living in the West Bank and Gaza. And it was, the Israelis were shocked to learn that there are 2.7 million Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. And add to them 1 million in Israel proper, then you have 3.7 million. And you have less than 5 million Israeli Jews. What do you want, Israel? Do you want a binational state, fine and dandy, with us? You don't want it, then you want separation, but it's not a security separation. It won't work. The only thing that can work is political separation. When the Israelis decide that the time has come for political separation, they make the announcement, Jerry, we can talk about the suicide attempts after that, not before. And I've been here for 4 or 5 days, and between sleeping and waking up, I watch the news, and all of it is on O.J. Simpson. What's a big deal? What's a big deal? My God. I don't expect much of the United States of America. Thank you.
Dr. Shafi wants to say something.
Dr. Haider?
I wish to make a brief comment on the first question. I wish to make a brief comment on the first question. How do we view the acts of resistance by Hamas and the Islamists? First of all, we can't comment on this except in the context of what is going on. And here I want to emphasize certain things. First of all, Palestinians are entitled to resort to all sorts of measures, including legitimate armed struggle to try to rid themselves of occupation. Secondly, we condemn all acts of terrorism, including Israeli terrorism, which is often evaded comment, and it is going on almost every day. We condemn all acts of terrorism that do away with innocent lives. And third, there is a peace process that should be respected by all the parties, the requirements of peace. Now, the Israeli position, which is based on Israeli military power and with heedlessness towards legality and legitimacy and United Nations resolutions, is actually an indirect call for violence. The lack of progress, the obstruction of the peace process, for which Israel is responsible, leaves a big gap for Hamas and others to resort to violence. And so really this circle of violence can only be broken by giving the peace process the necessary legitimacy. And this is the responsibility of Israel. I think the Palestinian people have contributed all that is needed for the sake of peace, but Israel has maintained its intransigent position, claiming all the Palestinian territory, and on the basis of which it continues to practice its settlement activity. So we have to say this. We don't condone the acts of Hamas, blowing the bus, this, that, but certainly we condone all acts of resistance by the Palestinians as a legitimate right. And we call on the world community to judge things in this context and not to take it out of context and talk about it. Israel in the recent time killed so many Palestinians in cold blood, Palestinians that it apprehended and could have arrested, but it preferred to kill them. Now, the world community does not see anything in this, it seems to me. They only see the bus accident and the others. So I think this is the way we see things. What is demanded is that as long as Israel is obstructing the road to peace, as long as the peace process is lacking credibility, then there is this big gap for acts of violence. Now, I should say here now, at this moment, where the world community is still under the illusion that there is a credible peace process, the acts of Hamas are actually counterproductive to our benefit, because the world sees that there is a peace process going on, and these acts are destroying this only chance of achieving peace. But this is going to change very soon. The world is going to realize that this peace process is not really a peace process. It is obstructive. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Haider. Those of us with lunch tickets will have the real wonderful opportunity to listen to more of Dr. Haider over the luncheon address. I guess lunch is supposed to start in about 6 minutes, so that gives us 6 minutes to engage in networking and other human functions. And it's lunch.
as soon as you are safely supplied with coffee, that will be the signal to begin. It is indeed a pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the members of the Executive Committee of the Center for Policy Analysis on Palestine and its parent organization, the Jerusalem Fund for Education and Community Development, and its board of directors. I feel privileged to be the one to introduce to you our distinguished speaker. I first became acquainted with Dr. Haider Abdel Shafi nearly 20 years ago now, when I joined the faculty of Birzeit University in 1975, on whose board of director Dr. Abdel Shafi served. More recently, I was also privileged to share with him, in a modest way, the experience of representing the Palestinian people. And he was chosen to head the Palestinian delegation to the Madrid Peace Conference and the 2 years of negotiations which followed. To me, Dr. Abdel Shafi represents a breed of men about whom it can be said that familiarity breeds even greater respect. Dr. Abdel Shafi has a long and honorable record of service to the Palestinian people and their just cause. After graduation from the medical school of the American University of Beirut, he served as Director of Medical Services in the Gaza Strip. He also served as the Speaker of the Legislative Council of the Gaza Strip, and he was one of the Palestinian leaders who established the Palestine Liberation Organization in Jerusalem in May of 1964, and was a member of its first executive committee. He is chairman of the Gaza Red Crescent Society and a member of the Board of Trustees of Birzeit University. And of course, he was the one who led the Palestinian delegation to the Arab-Israeli peace talks for 2 years. And I will say without fear of contradiction that his choice as to head the Palestinian delegation to the peace talks was universally acclaimed by Palestinians everywhere and of all persuasions as the wisest decision made by the PLO leadership in its long career. But to me, the most meaningful thing to say about Dr. Abdel Shafi is this. At times of national crisis, such as the present time for the Palestinian people, times full of promise as well as pitfalls and perils, public figures become vulnerable. Reputations become particularly perishable. As the people battle with frustrations and anger, fearful for their future, they become agitated, edgy, and quarrelsome. It takes a special kind of integrity and character for a leader to sustain through all of this the affection and the confidence and the respect of his people. Dr. Abdel Shafi is such a man. It gives me pleasure to bring him to you, Dr. Abdel Shafi.
Greetings to you all. It's my pleasure to be with you this afternoon and to address you on the subject that was picked up for me by Professor Hallaj, Recapturing the Dream. Dr. Hallaj invited me. He did tell me about suggesting the topic to be recapturing the dream. As I reflected on this, I immediately thought that recapturing the dream is not yet a foregone hope. And I also felt that I have some ideas where to start, what is the priority. But of course the rest, realizing the dream, is an all-Palestinian responsibility. And so let's get going and see what we have. To speak of recapturing the Palestinian dream, one should review the past with the intent of discerning the reasons for the successive setbacks and failures of the Palestinian national struggle, in spite of the heavy sacrifices that the Palestinians suffered and continue to suffer. It's also important to review the present situation in all its aspects bearing on the problem of peace, and carefully determine the assets in our favor and the obstacles blocking the road to our dream. Palestinians have always been inclined to lay emphasis and blame on extrinsic factors for their plight. One certainly cannot underestimate these factors, but that is not the whole story. Now you bear with me to go a little bit into the past, into the roots. The roots of the problem go back to the year 1897, when in the First Zionist Congress, the Jews adopted a resolution claiming Palestine and parts of other Arab territories for establishing a Jewish state. In commitment to this goal, they made ritual of several basic concepts. One, gradual build-up of an economic and military potential as the basis for achievement of political aims, as you have seen. Second, alliance with a great power external to the Middle East. Third, non-recognition of the existence of a Palestinian national entity. Fourth, Zionism civilizing mission in an underdeveloped area. 5, economic, social, and cultural segregation as prerequisites for the renaissance of Jewish national life. And 6, the concept of peace from strength. You review the past, you see that all these principles have been maintained by Zionism and by Israel. Right from the beginning, the Zionist program benefited from the emergence of a dedicated and motivated leadership imbued with the declared ideals and dreams of Zionism, to the extent of being insensitive to the legitimate rights of others. With its background of developed Western societies, a network of organized leadership structure was readily established and put to work, seeking support in the European capitals and in the Turkish governing circles, and later in Palestine under the mandatory government. Needless to point out the commitment made by the mandatory government to the Zionist program. On the Arab side, no leadership structure matching that of the Zionists could be realized. Factors involved were underdevelopment, rural and semi-feudal society, with strong familial and tribal prejudices. All that was possible was a loosely organized body composed of heads of influential families, which was called the Executive Committee. After the establishment of several political parties in Palestine in the 30s, the leadership was reorganized to be composed from the heads of these parties and was given the name the Higher Arab Committee. Benefiting from its European background and international experience, the Jewish leadership set itself in earnestness to the task of fulfilling the objectives of Zionism in all spheres, creating military and economic potential, public relations structures, mobilization of the Jewish people in Palestine and outside, While never abandoning the declared objectives, it often practiced flexibility to bypass obstacles and was always apt in exploiting Palestinian and Arab mistakes. On the Palestinian side, due to lack of proper organization, sophistication, and collective thinking, the leadership was unable to size up the Zionist threat and alert the masses, Palestinian masses, to the realities of the situation. There was no provision for research needs, resistance planning, or the ability of making tactical options and exploiting opportunities. The sense of belonging to a big Arab world and the justness of the Palestinian case reduced the sense of danger, the imperatives of meeting the challenge, as well as neglecting the principle of tactical flexibility and political maneuverability. So the Palestinian effort on the ground remained a sort of disorganized resistance. Politically, and because of its inherent weakness, the leadership retreated to the confines of a rejectionist attitude, the all or none position. Although one cannot belittle the asymmetry in terms of power between the combined mandatory and Zionist forces on one side, and whatever the Palestinians could mount in terms of power on the other, still it is not the sole reason for the 1948 catastrophe. In my opinion, the asymmetry in leadership competence that I just referred to played an important role. Another important factor that had a share in what happened is the Arab factor, what was initially called the national dimension of the Palestinian problem, meaning that the Zionist threat is not limited to Palestine but extends to the Arab environment. The absence of a clear definition of the national dimension and the failure to stipulate a clear Palestinian-Arab working relationship left much room for Arab intervention that was pregnant with inter-Arab conflicts, paving the way for the catastrophe of 1948. Palestinian leadership, through a clear definition of the national dimension, could have decided how, what, and when any Arab help is rendered. That could have averted the destructive effects of the Arab military intervention in 1948. Further, after the emergence of the Palestinian refugee problem, with substantial numbers of refugees hosted in the Arab countries, the issue became so much more crucial. Continued failure of the Palestinian leadership to adopt a clear Palestinian-Arab policy led to endless complications fouling the climate of Palestinian-Arab relations. The mandatory period, notwithstanding its bitter and catastrophic end, constituted a wealth of experience for the Palestinians to benefit from. The ability of the Palestinians, refugees and non-refugees, to withstand the disastrous effects of 1948 and to recuperate in a relatively short time is only a measure of their genuine resourcefulness and determination to stand firm in the face of disasters and difficulties. The birth of the PLO in 1964 as a legitimate leadership and a symbol of Palestinian unity, affirming the Palestinian identity and foiling all attempts to erase it, is another proof of their patriotism and tenacious will in defense of their inalienable rights. One could imagine that the new leadership that assumed control of the PLO after 1967 would have time to review the past and ponder the lessons of the mandatory interval before drawing up any plans or deciding on any strategy. If there was any obvious lesson, it was the imperative of some form of unity on the leadership level. Regrettably, that has not been heeded, to the sorrowful detriment of the Palestinian people. I certainly here don't blame the initial leadership of the 20s and the 30s because it was a leadership that came to be a difficult period. The Arab countries coming from under a reactionary regime, Turkish regime, with all its legacy, and one really realistically could not have expected that initial leadership to be much better than what it was. Certainly, I have much criticism and blame for the leadership after 1967.